Hello and welcome to The Exchange.
On today's show, we'll be discussing the challenges of unemployment. For numerous reasons, working is beneficial to our overall well-being.
Having a job gives us purpose, but what do you do when the dark cloud of unemployment continues to dampen your day?
The second question asked when meeting someone new is typically, what do you do? If you don't do anything, then what are you? This can be quite crushing for someone who's been out of work for a long period of time, not to mention financially stressful. So if you find yourself out of work, what's the best way to get back into the job market?
Joining us today, we have award-winning careers coach Rebecca Fraser. Rebecca has extensive experience in career coaching, resume writing and professional development, and is the Vice President for the Victorian Sector of Career Development Association of Australia. Lovely to have you on the show today, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me.
Going to be a good show. We also have Daniela Ascone from Youth Connect, an organisation that supports young people with the skills and knowledge they need to transition from secondary and further education to employment. Welcome, Daniela.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. We're finding that the unemployment rate is about 6% at the moment. What are some of the contributing factors to that, do you think?
I think there's a number of issues, and one being the lack of job opportunities available to people who are seeking employment. There's also been a shift in terms of what employers are actually looking for, so skill sets and skill needs.
And have those skill sets and skill needs changed over recently?
Yeah, look, as the years have gone by, there are a number of industries that are experiencing those skill shortages, so it's really important that people who are job seeking are aware of those skill shortages and actually go out and look into further educating themselves so that they are equipped with those skills to be able to meet the skill industry needs.
I'd like to come back to that actually.
Find out what skills are actually missing. Yeah,
very much so. Of course, unemployment is increasing, and particularly amongst the youth as well. Rebecca, would you like to speak into that?
I think definitely, and in Victoria we're seeing certain areas that are going to be substantially impacted by the automotive downturn. We're looking definitely at Broadmeadows, Dandenong and places like that are already seeing in excess of 20% youth unemployment, and that's a big issue. And
sure is.
Obviously an issue with funding from government to be able to keep programs running to help the youth is a major problem for all of us as well.
Why is it hard for people to get a job?
Look, I think it comes down to what they perceive as employer expectations and vice versa, what the employer believes that the job seeker can actually do in their capacity. So, for example, the organisation that I work for specifically focuses on young people aged 15 to 25. So for those particular young people, going into the workforce is obviously a daunting experience for them. So they will look at different alternatives to obtaining employment and possibly looking at opportunities such as volunteering before they actually enter into paid employment, which also contributes to unemployment rates.
Well, because they're volunteering and not working for money?
Correct.
But surely that would be a good thing, would it not?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Volunteering is ideal for youth to actually get the experience that they need and get some of those transferable skills. And I think one of the issues that we're seeing, and the reason why that we do have a great deal of unemployed, is the hidden job market in Victoria has increased substantially.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Well, the hidden job market is jobs that are sourced through word of mouth, existing networks,
so
direct, proactive. They're never advertised, or they're advertised by policy.
What percentage would be hidden?
They're talking in excess of 80% in Victoria at this point are sourced through the hidden job market. So what we're seeing is only 20% of jobs are available through promoted jobs. And the other challenge is a lot of organisations are moving to online recruitment tools. So they could be predefined programs that they purchase, platforms that are designed for this purpose, or they could be self-built platforms. And what that means is that if a person doesn't write a resume in a certain format, or they don't have the right keywords, depending on how the tool actually responds to their application may not even be getting through.
That's fascinating.
It is.
So someone, just, I'm completely ignorant of this for obvious reasons. If you could explain exactly how that happens, like does someone put their resume up
Yep.
Or do they actually have to put it in to a particular place?
There's different types of tools, and they all fall into the bucket of e-recruitment tools. And if we were talking the majority, which are HR management systems, when you see a job advertised and you click the apply button, it sends it to the system rather than sending it directly to a person.
Okay.
Now, that resume might go through a parser tool, which is where the technology itself actually extracts the data from the resume, and it uses that to actually populate a database system.
So then is there a whole industry on what are the keywords to put in there so that you get accepted?
Look, I think it's...
What are the keywords?
Yeah.
What are the keywords?
The keywords are a lot of people say, oh, look, the keywords are in the job advert, which is extremely untrue. Keywords are normally set by the person who's recruiting for the role, may not be the person writing the job advert. So the keywords are relevant to the industry, the type of role you're targeting, and also that personal preference that someone may have. So it may be they're looking for someone who may have worked directly under a CEO previously. So one of the keywords might be CEO. And it depends on the technology, how the technology is implemented to how it works.
It's quite random, really.
It is huge. It's a massive market, and we're seeing more and more places in Australia. And I went and saw one that's just been developed in Victoria last week, and where they're moving to is I suppose some of the challenges that a lot of these job seekers are going to have, because there's people out there who profess to be resume writers and that sort of thing who don't understand these technologies. They get several $100s for writing a document that doesn't work in e-recruitment tools. So there's a big issue, and you would definitely be seeing that with youth, because it's hard for people to keep up unless they're doing the research. So it's a real challenge, and the youth are not aware of what's going on.
Daniela, you mentioned earlier about skill gaps. What are some of the skill gaps that employers are looking for?
Well, in terms of industry areas, we've got a really big push to promote the health and community services sector. It's not an industry that is appealing to many young people. It's not what we call a sexy industry for young people. So how do you promote the job opportunities? And there are many job opportunities in the health and community services sector. So that is one industry area. So what we can do is engage with education providers and provide them with that information, bring employers into school settings and let them talk to young people about those job opportunities and help inform actually what young people are learning in the classroom. And a way to actually entice young people to look at those areas is to actually bring them into workplaces, encourage work experience and work placement for young people to actually get out there and learn a little bit more of what types of roles that they would be actually able to do. We work with a group of young people who have a very strong interest in music. So who would have thought that you can actually work in the health and community services sector by having an interest in music? I mean, music therapy is a really big thing in the sector. So actually educating young people, parents and families, and also education providers about that is really important.
And matching skills.
So that's something you're doing. Are we seeing our education system keep up with that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Look, I've been at Youth Connect for over 7 years, and I've definitely seen a shift in what educators are bringing into the classrooms. There's always new things and new ways to engage young people in the career space, but I definitely think both the educators but also the government is doing a fair bit to promote new careers and also emerging industries, because one thing we talk about to young people is that some of the jobs that you will be doing in 10, 20 years' time
don't even exist.
Don't even exist, correct. Yeah. So those sort of things are happening, and one thing the CDAA also have a big push for is to really up the ante, so to speak, of career development in education settings across the country, which is really a big focus point for both state, territory and federal governments at the moment, and definitely myself and Rebecca are obviously really interested to see that flourish across our sectors. Yeah.
Do we have any insight, Rebecca, into what some of the future industries and jobs that might open up? I mean, I know they don't exist yet, or maybe we're just seeing some of the early stages, but what are we seeing?
I think definitely water engineering is something that is definitely growing, and obviously moving to how there's a whole focus in France is more advanced than we are here in Australia about how water can be used from an engineering perspective and to generate electricity. Biomedical, although it has started, the industry itself is going to change substantially, and we're going to see a lot of roles coming out of biomedical And all of this is coming from the health and community services sector, because we are an ageing population, and that's just the reality of it, and we need the skills in that industry to actually help us move there.
It's fascinating. So young people that are watching this program, or parents that are watching this program, they've got little kids at the moment, what way should they be steering them, you know, subjects at school, all of that kind of thing?
I think it's
according
really,
to their gifts,
yeah,
of course.
Obviously, it's really hard to say. I mean, from a career perspective, it's really important to guide your children in the direction that suits them, and making sure they follow in their interests, and aligning that back to industries where possible. Because even though industries are getting, I suppose, manufacturing for one, it is an industry that is slowing down here in Victoria, but there is still a manufacturing sector. It just isn't going to be automotive. But there is still going to be some automotive organisations have branched out. They saw this coming, so they've branched out and they're now exporting. So we are still seeing those sorts of things. So it's really important to not try and push your child based on where we're assuming there's going to be a skills gap, because the GFC had a huge impact on industries that we didn't expect it to have industries on. So it's really important to follow the pathway that's suited to your child.
Great. We're going to come back and talk about this a little bit more in just a moment. We'll also got Street Talk coming up right after this on The Exchange.
Do you think social security benefits help or hinder the unemployed?
I think they help the unemployed. You've always got to give people a chance. There's always going to be people who will rot the system, but look, they're generally a minority.
You hear a lot of dole bludgers and stuff like that. You hear about that a lot, so I don't know, I've done this be the best sort of thing.
I think it's really situational and depends on the individual and their circumstances. I think some people are really prohibited from finding work and therefore they need those benefits, whereas other people might consider it an opportunity not to look for gainful employment.
Obviously help, but you don't want to create a hand-to-mouth society. You need to provide people with the facility to be able to make their own money in the long run.
I think it's a pretty controversial topic, but I think it helps us for the most part. I mean, I think there are a lot of other places and a lot of other countries in the world that that don't offer those things.
I think it helps the unemployed in good ways and bad. So for some, it might demotivate them for looking for new work, but there are some people who genuinely need it.
I think they provide a good transition for people who probably are looking for employment and have been laid off.
Well, they obviously help. If you've got no money, it's great to have some money.
Do you think social security benefits help or hinder the unemployed?
I don't know. I really don't know, mate.
Where?
And what do you think is one way to beat unemployment?
Look, you can continue to uptrain people, upskill them. I think people also need to realise that they need to perhaps move to an area where there is more jobs going, so they have to be mobile as well. But again, the more support you can give them to do that, the better, I think.
Diversify employment opportunities to make a lot more opportunities accessible for perhaps people who might not normally find opportunities as readily, new migrants, people with illness, disability, that type of thing.
Further education and training, definitely.
I think probably through government support and government training.
Maybe inject more money, or the stimulus package, Johnny Howard, call out.
Well, it's really hard. I mean, you know, there's just no manufacturing, people aren't making things anymore. We don't produce anything in this country.
Make it kind of their job to look for a job.
Allow employers to develop more skills instead of just relying on a piece of paper. Basically, those of us who are skilled to work, I reckon that it'd be more beneficial if you go, hey, give us a chance.
And what do you think is one way a person can beat unemployment?
Go and find a job.
Great advice, beating unemployment by finding a job. Who would ever thought? Welcome back. We're discussing how to beat unemployment with careers coach Rebecca Fraser and Youth Connect's Daniela Ascone. And Sandra, our Street Talk reporter, joins us. Welcome.
Thank you.
If it was just as easy as that, as go and find a job, wouldn't everybody just do it?
Correct. I'm quite surprised.
Yes, hello and welcome to Staking the Obvious. So what stood out to you?
Look, what I thought was interesting was in terms of unemployment benefits. One person said, you know, how do we not create that hand-to-mouth culture? if unemployment is rising and we'll probably see an increase in social security benefits, I'd be interested to see how we do that. How do we overcome that culture creeping right across?
The entitlement.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone...
But at the same time, you've got to provide some support. I mean, people in between jobs, it's not as easy as just going to find a job. What are some of the things that people face between one job and the next job when they're unemployed?
I think a lot of the issue is for those that have been made redundant and who may have actually received a financial settlement as part of that redundancy, which is part of the law, they're not entitled to get any support. And if their organisation hasn't provided them with any outplacement support, then they're on their own. And there's a lot of things have changed in the last 2 years alone in the labour market, and it changes constantly, that if you don't actually know how to do it, where to start, then you end up with it in the deep end. And that's where a lot of people struggle.
So if someone has been made redundant and that money runs out, then they're still not allowed to take...
It's all based on their assets and how long they've been able to use that money for. So it really depends how much they get, and there's a lot of restrictions around it. So there's a lot of people who have been made unemployed and yet they're not entitled for any support. And that's a real gap we've got. And it definitely isn't something that can be covered by government money, and it really is up to the individual to know where to go. But if we were able to communicate out more where to go to the CDAA, go and talk to someone who's qualified, then consumers would be more aware of what they are able to achieve.
And something that we've found in terms of working with young people is to actually change that mind shift. So actually to embed in schools with young people. So when they're 14 and 9 months, we would go with our resume to the Coles supermarket, etc., is to bring that back, bring that back to the classroom and encourage young people to earn and learn, which has been a huge focus in terms of the work that I've been doing at Youth Connect, is to really encourage the government to shift that mindset from a young age, so that we're not having to deal with unemployment for especially young people when they finish TAFE or university, which seems to be a huge problem in society, is that they're sort of left with all these amazing qualifications, but actually no work experience.
Or life experience,
working for an
employer.
So I'm saying just peel it back and bring it back to, you know, the schoolyard, so to speak, and actually get young people to get out there. And hopefully, it won't happen overnight, but we can actually change the whole idea that, well, there's always benefits that you can fall back on. And actually getting people to get out there, like the last lady said there, is go get a job.
Which might be easier said than done, though.
Exactly. And we became so education focused over the last probably 10, 15 years, where it was expected that the first thing you would do is go to university or go to TAFE, and if you weren't, well, you're just going to be a tradesperson. Well, if I was earning the money that tradespeople earned, I would have done that as well. So I think that the mindset is actually around also influencing the parents, because a lot of parents believe that their kids have to go to university. But we're seeing now with the vet stream and things like that, and apprentices, the skill shortage around apprenticeship programs is unbelievable. And there are so many sectors. Construction, there's a massive skill shortage in construction. Why aren't we promoting these anymore and saying, look, you do get an education. You don't have to have a master's qualification or a PhD to go and get a job. And employers are starting to come along that way, because employers are seeing that they're finding it more and more difficult to employ a graduate who has none of that skills that they can actually take into an organisation.
So does it start in the home as well as the school?
As well as the school. Has to be both. Has to be both. And the parents need to learn, they need to be a parenting coach, rather than just being specifically, I'm a parent, you're going to university. They need to coach their kids to what's best for the kids to get the long-term outcome. And it's not always education. It's a lot of... $30,000 on an education is a lot of money to pay back.
And parents play that biggest influence in a young person's transition. There's a lot of research both within Australia and overseas that verifies that. And you might not think that, given that sometimes the conversations don't exist between a young person and the parent. But, I mean, at Youth Connect, we run a national program called Parents as Career Transition Support. That is funded by the Australian Government Department of Education to actually do that, educate parents about the opportunities available to young people. What's an apprenticeship? What is vet in schools? What what are the alternative learning pathways, and it's okay if your son or daughter does not transition into university or TAFE. There are so many opportunities for them, and it's been a highly successful program across Australia, and parents have sat in the room and they've been amazed at the amazing opportunities available to young people, and it's that whole education. So while we're focusing on young people, we're focusing on employers and teachers, bring it back to the home, because that's where a lot of the conversations are happening, in the kitchen, on the way to footy practice, etc., and parents need to be aware of those options. So it's a huge thing at the moment.
Wonderful. So we've got to go to a break. We'll come back with more in just a moment. So hold that thought, Rebecca. Thanks, Sandra.
Thanks, Sandra.
We'll be back in just a moment with more on The Exchange. Welcome back. We're chatting with Rebecca Fraser and Daniela Ascone about how to beat unemployment.
Yes, learning lots of new things. Daniela, tell us, how can Youth Connect assist people who are unemployed?
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we predominantly support young people aged 15 to 25. So we're not only having young people come into our organisation, we're based in Moorabbin, but we're also going out and delivering programs and services within schools and community settings. So something that we touched on earlier on is about preparing people for employment. So we do that with young people. So we will prepare them for an interview, help them with mock interviews, resume writing, but also understanding what employer expectations are and what their role as an employee is. Many of the young people that we transition into employment sometimes have issues keeping that job, so we support them and prepare them on how to actually keep the job. So we've got case management support that we provide one-on-one to young people, but also we're delivering group work in that whole employability skills training area.
Rebecca, yourself personally and the organisation that you work for, what do you offer to the unemployed?
So where I specialise is actually in helping people understand the type of job they should be going for, so career profiling. So starting with working out what are your interest areas, and based on your interest areas we use a proper psychometric tool and determine the career pathway. Now, we don't use that on all of the clients, it just depends on some of them, and if they're not sure where they're going. And then from there we do their personal marketing, their branding, teach them about the labour market, employability skills, how to stay employed, interview skills, similar sort of thing, but more for that that senior professional, the gap that's currently in the market, and also the outplacement side when people are made redundant following the same sort of process following redundancy.
So do you help them to understand they may have been doing a specific job for many years, they're made redundant, and they can't think of themselves as anything other than that? Do you help them to look at how their skills could be transferred into another market field?
Absolutely. I was just telling the girls earlier, actually, a great example. I just got a message whilst we were in getting our hair and makeup done from a client, and she was a drafts engineer. So she's been doing drafting for the last 8 years and decided she'd like to work for this very well-known fitness brand. She just loved their clothes and loved their vision. So we did a Twitter campaign, and every day she had to take a photo for 60 days of her dressed in their fitness clothes and tag them. So she did that for 60 days. We did up a special type of resume, what we called a believe board, sent that up to the PR manager. She had her first interview there last week and another interview today to work out where she'll fit in the organisation. So a completely different transition, but taking a new approach to it and using social media.
Is that the way of the future, do you think, more and more?
Not necessarily, no. It depends on the type of... So the organisation that this lady was targeting was big on social media, so
there wasn't a job available.
No.
She was targeting it.
She was targeting them. So she was doing a Twitter campaign. Yeah.
Where do I fit in your organisation?
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, it worked really well, but that doesn't work for everybody, so everyone's individual.
How can those of us who are employed help the unemployed?
So, for example, we work with a lot of employers, so one-man businesses right through to large corporates, and looking at your business and looking for opportunities where you can actually invite people to come in on a voluntary basis, work experience, or similar to this case here, is looking to see whether or not there is a gap and there is a need, and creating an opportunity. You are right, it is a whole community approach to supporting people who are unemployed, and that means looking at opportunities across the board.
Yeah. Would you add anything to that, Rebecca? Is this a final word?
No, I think it's making sure that you're aware of the opportunities in your local neighbourhood as well as in the city, and building up your network. That's really what we need to be doing as professionals. If you're employed, keep your network going. If you're unemployed, keep focusing on your network.
Wonderful. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for watching. Please go to our website for a fact sheet as well as more information about our show. Hope you can join us next time.
Bye for now.